Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I have as my guest today Mary Furlong, who runs a couple of amazing, I don't even know whether you call them conferences or gatherings or something. We are coming off of her Boomer Longevity Summit. I'm not sure I got that quite right. You can correct me. And we're just going to kind of do a recap. It was really an amazing, wonderful experience. But before we get started, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Mary, happy Tuesday. Amazing conference that you ran last week. It had been a few years since I've been. Got to see some old friends, which is always good. Got to do some amazing things. I just would like to spend a little time for the next 25 minutes or so talking about what your highlights were. I've got a list of what my highlights were, and but let's start with just who you are.
Well, I'm Mary Furlong. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been building companies in the longevity market for 35 years, senior net, third age. And for the past 22 years, I have had a newsletter, podcast, and then we produced the Longevity Venture Summit, which was last week. So we've been doing that for 22 years, have given away $210,000 for great ideas in the longevity market. And then we also produce the Longevity Innovation Summit, which is at the National Press Club in December. It always focuses on caregiving, but we'll be looking at new policy directions, which will be another exciting event. We had record attendance. I think this is the fifth conference we sold out. So it was a big success last week. 10 countries were represented. Over half the audience was new, and we had an investor track this time. That was one of the highlights, to bring in so many investors.
Yeah, it's really a remarkable. It was a remarkable gathering of people. I'll tell you the one thing that really stood out to me, and there's so many things, but the one thing that really stood out to me, and this is a story I've told many times. I think the first time I ever went to a pitch event where a group of entrepreneurs got up and pitched their company and their business to investors was at your conference when it was still at Santa Clara University. And I'd only been doing senior living foresight for a few years. It was before we actually made the name change, and you invited me, and I was so excited. And I remember it was early morning breakfast thing. And I thought, man, I'm going to see all these really amazing companies. This is going to be so cool and innovative. And I remember walking away from it thinking, I don't know, I wasn't that impressed with those companies, if I'm honest about it. But now we fast forward, I think that's been 10, maybe 12 years, probably 10 years since I was there. And the quality of the companies that pitched and talked is like, I don't know, 100x better. Just some remarkable, amazing things where I walked away saying, that's really cool. That's really cool. That's really cool. So what do you think's happened?
Well, first of all, when I started this, the origin of how it happened is I got to Santa Clara and the dean said, raise money for the business school. So I went to Microsoft. I said, well, I'll go to these places. They said, oh no, the English department has that high-tech company. And then I thought, well, I have to come up with another idea. So Brad Vail took me to the JP Morgan conference in San Francisco, and we watched the analyst, which is really an important part. Our conference has a lot of analyst briefings, and that gives people the data. And then he told me they funded 3 companies out of the Stanford business plan competition. So that's where I got the idea to have a business plan competition. Now, ironically, 22 years ago, we had 3 finalists from Wharton. One of those finalists didn't win, but went on to build a $100 million company called Pep Plan. And Natasha Ashton, she now lives on the ship called The World part-time. I went on the world, and that's where I gave 3 talks there, and that's where I met Ryan Cotton, who I invited to be one of our featured TED Talk speakers at this conference. So the history of that conference, there were some companies that did incredibly well. In fact, we had 4 people come to the conference that were prior winners and then are now investors. And as you know, we've raised over 300 million in this market. So we're always looking for new investors in the market, but the quality of the business plans is top of game. And NIA's presence there and the kind of companies NIA has funded and the kind of companies—
Let's define what NIA is, because a lot of people won't know that.
So about 5 years ago, we started working with the National Institute on Aging, Todd Heim and his group. They have a $160 million fund, and 60% of that fund goes to investment in dementia care. The other 40%, a lot of age tech related investments. These are evidence-based solution entrepreneurs who've connected to top centers of excellence at universities, Hopkins, UMass. So you have the clinical expertise. You have they've de-risked the innovation and the investment challenge by having so much due diligence done with the research about the innovation. So you're absolutely right, Steve. Well, everybody has a story of a parent who could have used a technology. The category of the longevity market is akin to climate market, but I think there's more deal flow in that market. And clearly Andy Miller and Amelia Hay have played a key role for us in becoming the title sponsor and bringing in a lot of the age tech companies and best of class learnings. And we now have structured networking throughout our whole event. So the other thing I would say, the deal flow comes from everywhere, from Australia, from the UK. Recently I participated in the UK dementia competition to give a prize, and Clairvoyant was there with their new product, TheoraCare, and that's the only US company that's in the finals for that competition. So I would say we had stellar entrepreneurs, and we also had more investors there. So NEA, which is New Enterprise Associates, had been a judge in the first year with Dick Kramlich. We had NEA back this year as a judge. We had a judge from Israel had a venture fund coming in. And then, of course, Danny Kaplan has his new fund, Equitage. And Ziegler was there, which plays a really important role in the conference itself.
Yeah, it was so the quality of it was so high. I just one of the things I don't was this the first year you'd done the boot camps on the first day?
I did. Well, let me tell you why we did the boot camps. We've had boot camps on the first day before. We've had kind of a pre-conference. But when I started the conference planning in January, I began listening to the market, and every week we listen to client calls and we hear how they're pivoting. And we heard from the investors, it's going to take longer to get an investment. So you better make sure that your entrepreneurs know how to find a customer. So when Carrie Shaw and Ali Ahmadi approached me about doing a session on how to go find a customer, I said, that's a good idea. So I added the boot camps. And then as I began hearing what people needed to know about go-to-market strategies, about marketing using LinkedIn and user interface design, and we're fortunate enough to have someone from Meta come and do a boot camp on marketing through Meta. And of course, Sherry Selling came and did a great marketing boot camp with LifeLoop. So we just kept adding these boot camps. We ended up with 9 of them. We had no time to market, and the boot camps were full. So now I will double down on boot camps. We will have boot camps definitely next year, but they were a response. They were our response to the market telling us people need skills right now. And this is how they're pivoting, and this is how they're surviving in the market. I mean, there's one company we work with, Jubilee TV. They had to move their manufacturing from China to Vietnam in 4 weeks. So how the companies were moving fast, pedaling very fast, and we just did the boot camps to give people skills to learn from each other. And I think our conferences always have this spirit of learning from each other.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting. There are two companies there that I find really fascinating. Posit Science, who does, and I spent a little time talking to Jeff Zimmerman, and he always does this wonderful, wonderful recap. And then the guys at Jubilee TV, and they were actually, when they were Cabo, they were actually one of our sponsors. And in both those cases, the thing I found really interesting is they both found that they tried to tackle the senior living market without much success. And so they went to the consumer market with much more success. And now they're interested in talking to both of them, they're interested in maybe revisiting the senior living space. But it feels, I don't know what the lessons are, but it feels like there should be some lessons there. Are there lessons for senior living, do you think? Do you think we're just too behind the times and adopting stuff, or is it a messaging strategy for tech companies, or what are your thoughts?
I wish we had more senior living participants at the conference. Between PACE, having PACE programs, home care programs, and senior living programs, we did have Eschaton there, we did have Sequoia there, and we did have Raj, who's building a new senior community in Sonoma, a community with best of class in memory care. Had a table host at every table from senior living. I think that we can't innovate in a vacuum. We need to really be very.
We're struggling here a little bit.
And so we've watched their success with the VA. We've watched their success with the VA, with Posit Science. We've watched their success.
Oops. Why don't you pull her off? So I assume that it's Mary and not me, Jada. I'm going to have to ask a little bit from the background. Okay. So Mary's connection's a little bit tough. It looks like maybe we can get her back.
Circle going slow.
Okay. I think you're back.
Okay. So going back to Posit Science, we've worked with them for 22 years. They've been successful with the VA. They've been successful with Medicare Advantage. They've been successful.
It almost works, and so it makes it really, really tough. Mary, we've got your connection is really slow, and it's coming in very difficult. I'm not sure what's going on. It might be I'll talk for a minute. Maybe you can go out and then come back in. And I will I'll sort of give some additional thoughts on it. I agree with Mary. This is a place where there are more senior living organizations ought to be participating. What happens is that we stay in our own bubble and we see the same old tech companies, the same old solution providers, and there's a lot of new and interesting things happening out there in the marketplace that are available that could really transform senior living. I saw 2 or 3 technologies we're working on getting them on as guests that would be transformative, that would be honestly are a real threat to some of the existing solution providers in that live in the space right now, just because they've taken what's already been done and really moved further down the road. So we'll have some of those stories in the coming weeks. One of the ones that I'm really excited about is there is a guy that Mary had there who runs the company that sells more hearing aids than any other company in the whole wide world, right? And he is a master storyteller, master marketer, and I want to hear his story. But the other thing I want to do is I want to talk to him about how he'd sell senior living, because it would really be an amazing, amazing thing. So it's been fantastic to do that. The other thing I would say is that Kenwat Dykewall gave some an amazing keynote. And what I really liked about it is he provided a tremendous framework. I'll be writing some content on this, but he provided a tremendous framework for how senior living might market itself better to older people. I think in many respects, we do a pretty good job of it, but there's some things that we are just missing, and we need these outside voices rather than listening to the inside voices and talking to each other, because what happens is we talk to each other and we think we're wonderful, and we are wonderful. I guess I don't want to be too terrible about that, but we are kind of wonderful, but we could really learn some things. The other thing I would say about it is that there are a number of people there who are experts, who are experts in going to market. And I've got so many notes, and I'll be writing about this, that'll be for solution providers in the senior living space about how they could be telling their story better to the senior living community, how they could be making the story work better. And it would be transformative for your company. So if you're a solution provider, it's a place you should be. If you're an operator and you're looking for technology that will save you money, that will make your staff more effective, it will make a huge difference. The other thing that I found really fascinating was that we talk so much about AI in the senior living space. It dominates virtually every conference we go to. And while there was a discussion about AI, it looks like Mary is back. Let's see if we can get her on. So we're going to see if we're going to do a little bit more technology stuff before we're ready to bring her back. But one of the things that was really interesting to me was while AI was part of the conversation, it was there was much less focus on it than, frankly, I expected in the industry, in the conference, because it was seen as more as an enabling technology than as a primary technology. So AI becomes a part of this thing, this platform that solves this problem. AI becomes a part of another platform that solves a problem. And it was a really phenomenal experience. And so we're going to try to come back on with Mary, I think.
Yes.
Hey, Mary, you're back.
Hi there. Yes.
Okay. Where were we?
You were asking me about Posit Science and Jubilee TV. So Posit, we worked with for many years, and 22 years, in fact. We've seen them be successful with Medicare Advantage, with the military, with nonprofits, and absolutely it works in senior housing. We just, what happens is there are 8 or 9 channels into the market. Same thing with Jubilee TV. I think it's time to bring the community that we formed and NIC and senior housing closer together. Yeah, I'm now on the NIC advisory board for Age Tech, but it's going to be important that these solutions get incorporated into the overall plan at the different centers. And people like Michael Scaff, who were there at Sequoia, they know that and they are paying attention to it. But we could forge a closer alliance for sure.
I think there were 7 senior living companies represented, and just based on the people I chatted with, and I saw looking around the room. And but I guess more sort of, and there were almost, with the exception of Carrie Shaw, there was almost nobody in sort of the traditional tech suppliers in the senior living space. There are a number of people who were there who were sort of emerging and moving into the tech space, but in terms of significant players. And the thing that really struck me, Mary, is that you've got some people who are experts about going to market.
Right.
And when I look at the solution providers in senior living, they, they're all doing the best they can, but they're really challenged with, how do they do a better job of telling their story? How do they get started? How do they make a presence? This was like a boot camp for them, and they all missed it. All of them, except for Carrie.
Well, we are going to do a fall event, which is online, and take those boot camps. So we are going to do an academy and do a reprise of those boot camps and then make it available to people. I mean, we wanted people together in person, but we're going to do a version of that will be available in the fall, like October. And so we just have to get the team organized to do that. We also did a collab with Richard Louie, and we did a collab is when you bring 10 people together and take a deep dive into a topic. So there are lots of other events that happen in addition to the event that the public sees, but we took people from different walks of life and focused on caregiving, and we took a deep dive on AI and caregiving. And of course, Lori Orlov has a new white paper on the AI in the home care market. So there's a big relationship between home care and senior housing. This investors move fast, entrepreneurs move fast. Yesterday, I had lunch or coffee with one of the investors from the investor dinner that we had, and he's an ICU doctor. And he's all about prevention in the home. And so these things are all connected. And it's wonderful, Steve, to be part of an industry that's growing in all the right ways, right? And it's just about the pace of the growth. And so I'm excited about the new ATIN network. That's the investor network. So people can join that network, and then they get a first look at investments in age tech. So we've been following up on some of those conversations.
So I think one of the things I've seen in the senior living space that has perhaps been a mistake is that I'll give you sort of two things, that we have sort of traditionally seen home care as almost the enemy, right? They keep people out of our senior living communities. And so we try to we don't spend a lot of time talking about that. And the other thing is we've had kind of a standoffish relationship with AARP for, again, mostly the same reasons that AARP's, his goal is to help people live where they want to live, which is mostly at home. And I actually think that maybe we're missing the boat on that, and that we should actually embrace. We should do a better job of embracing people who want to stay home, and say, if we're going to help you stay home as long as you can, and then we're here for you when the time comes that you're ready to make that move. Thoughts?
Well, first of all, in AARP, they, through their innovation lab, they are working closely with senior communities, like, Ashbury Communities is one of the places I think they're co-creating. But in terms of home care and senior living, absolutely. I noticed that Front Porch is sponsoring activities in our community. That's to help build the brand in the community. And so I do think there's huge revenue streams. Some of the fastest growing companies that I'm seeing are in home care. Inc. 5000, one is going from, they're on their way to 100 million in revenue in a very short time period with that home care market. They can't afford to miss that market when they're building brand in the community anyway.
Yeah, to me, it's almost remarkable. To me, I would argue that and maybe it's even too late, but the senior living has actually missed this massive opportunity. Imagine that, I don't know, that Brookdale or Sunrise or Holiday had said, we're going to we're going to position ourselves as the experts for creating high quality living at home or in community, and we're going to run our own home care agency. They'd have a pool of caregivers and other professional staff. They'd have a ready pool of people who, when they're ready to make the move, are right there for them.
Well, the boomers are the most well-educated generation. They're turning 80 next year. They're tipping into the time where they're going to choose senior living. the more the brand is built in community, there's absolutely no reason those exercise classes couldn't be opened up to the community, where the community couldn't be more involved in age tech, and why home care couldn't be an extension of a brand. That would be a great way to build pipeline. But the go-to-market strategy boot camps were really strong. I think everybody could learn from them.
Yep. No question about it. And I just think that for both the companies that are providing technology and for the companies that are operating senior living communities, to spend more time talking to these go-to-market people would have tremendous benefit. And so that was one of my really big takeaways there. Talk to me a little bit about your conference in Washington, D.C. in the fall.
Well, just before I do that, I want to mention that Grant Chamberlain of Ziegler has a really great report on digital health that we made available to all of the conference attendees. So it's worth taking a look at that on the Ziegler site. And then Lori Orlov's new report. And then Mark Mahaney did his tech predictions, which are really interesting. I saw people buying stock again right as he was speaking from Evercore. So on to December. So this will be the 7th time we've done the conference in December. It's at the National Press Club. It's December 16th and 17th. What can I say? Already, we had a speaker, Nirav Shah, who's been working closely with people in Washington about some of the policy changes that are going on. Some of the entrepreneurs that we featured have already been walking on Capitol Hill on both sides of the aisle, looking at how their innovation fits into the new preventative care legislation. So we're going to have to go find out who the stakeholders are in those organizations. And we also need to find the philosophy that the new administration has around age tech and caregiving. And we're fortunate to have Lance Robertson, who was head of the ACL, co-chair that event with us. And he's brought in a lot of the state directors. We were thrilled to have Susan from Sacramento, Susan Damaris from the Department of Aging in Sacramento. We'll always reach back to Greg Olson, Michelle Branham in Florida. So we have some of the state directors there. So a colleague of mine, Steve Jurvetson, venture capitalist, said, to build value, you need demographics, you need technology, and you need the regulatory environment. We sit in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area. We get a lot of understanding about the technology, and people reach out from around the world. The demographics, you and I know, all the senior living people know, the demographics don't change. The market is coming to us. The question is, how can we move as fast to understand the regulatory environment as it relates to those changes? So that's why we continue to do the Washington conference. We have a new special thing we haven't announced yet. We'll be sharing. It's kind of exciting. And we also will always take a look at the real family needs related to caregiving. And that is going to be one of the anchor social issues of our time, is caregiving for spouses, caregiving for siblings, caregiving for families, people taking care of us, self-care. We just had Withings on our podcast this morning, and their new scale that measures blood pressure and so forth. So we have to think about a healthier older generation, because the reason this is exciting, it's A, because of the people that have come together, right? The community that we formed. But B, the market's exciting, right? It's coming our way.
It does. You're absolutely right. And of course, the boomers have all the money. And that's a really important thing ought to be an important thing to every senior living operator. And I think that figuring out how to tell our story, how to actually create a product that people love. I think that today the thing that keeps resonating in my head is, how do we make senior living so cool that when people move in, they're going to go out and brag and say, "Oh man, I finally made it. I got to move into senior living," right?
Yeah, so that's what we want. And this Ken made the point, and it's always worth remembering. The real magic is in the talent and knowledge base of the older adult population. The only line that got a standing ovation at the White House conference, one of the ones that I went to, was that older people want a vision of the future, not just a memory of the past. And so, to the extent that the senior living community can capture those, can be rethought of as a place where people can live out their dreams, build their dreams. This is a very active, engaged population. If you look at the protests on Saturday, of the 5 million people that protested, there were a lot of boomers in those.
That's right.
They're very active and engaged. And they're looking for places to build community. That is the key. And so I think it's terribly exciting to be in the world of work that we're in today. Don't you, Steve?
I do. I think it's amazing. There are two things that Ken talked about, Ken Dykewald talked about, that I thought really hit home. The first is that the average older person watches 47 hours of TV a week. That's shocking. It's depressing, and it's exciting. They're watching 47 hours of TV a week because nobody's helping them figure out better, more productive, more exciting things to do. That's a huge, huge opportunity. And he told the story of, I can't remember, maybe you remember who it is, of somebody talking about his dream of 100,000 young people going out and planting trees, a big media person. And, Ken went to him afterwards and said, well, how about 100,000 or 1 million older people who have all this time and energy and money going out and doing the same thing? We just have so much opportunity to inspire people to go out and change the world. We need to create the opportunity. People want to do it.
And I think we should start small. So the reason I went and had coffee with this doctor who I met last Wednesday night is because we are all on Zoom calls during the day. Now at 4:00, I have tea in my garden, or I intentionally go out and do something to build community. So we're going to be doing something in the East Bay around age tech with the investor communities, because everybody's in their home office. And we don't all want to go open an office, but we want that connection that we feel that's in the community. So I think finding ways to engage and participate is something that we need to go out and intentionally do, whether it's through sports, through theater, through volunteering, and it's a resource. And also, a lot of people have aches and pains as they get older. Mobility was one of our boot camps. That's a huge category. Why? I love that company, Neurosantas. I'm an advisor. I mean, the fact that they're getting clinical trials at the forum in Cupertino, and that people are seeing a change in their balance because of that. These innovations are not just scientific stuff. They're things that can dramatically make a difference in your daily life. And of course, we mentioned Adian and Ishan Patel, but I joined as an advisor to that company as well. They've done really well in the retail, but they belong in home care and senior living.
They do.
Yeah, $98 hearing aid is a great thing. We gave those to our sponsors. I need to reach out and make sure they all got their hearing aids today. But I love advising that company. So these opportunities to enhance your life are right in front of you. And I'm so glad that we brought them all together. And I'm so glad that the regulatory environments at the state level, if you listen to GoGo Grandparent, they're really moving fast. So is Get Set Up, really moving fast. I mean, Get Set Up, what they're doing with AI in the state of New York, where you can go in and take a class on nutrition, and then up will pop up, do you know you qualify for these benefits? That's where AI is coming together to really serve the needs of older people. So it's thank you for giving me this time to reflect on what was a great event last week. I so appreciate our team and all the faculty and all the sponsors and all the energy. And the winners, we're going to have them on our podcast tomorrow. Take a look at Lexi. They won the business plan competition. Very exciting team out of Harvard.
Yeah, what they're doing is really interesting. I spent some time with their founder after the conference, and so I need to reach out to him as well. So anyway, Mary, thank you very much. Thank you for changing the world for older people. I love your passion. It is so exciting. And thank you all for watching. And we'll be back on Friday with another great leadership show. Mary, hang on for just a minute after we are off the air.